Standard 1C, misrepresentation. Members and candidates must not knowingly make any misrepresentations relating to investment analysis, recommendations, actions, or other professional activities. It's important to understand the definition of misrepresentation. A misrepresentation is any untrue statement or omission of fact, or any statement that is otherwise false or misleading. To understand the importance of this standard, recognize the fact that trust is the foundation of the investment profession. You as an investment manager might be offering advice, financial advice to your clients. Obviously, your clients trust you, which is why they are asking for your advice. If that trust is lost because there is a perception that you are misrepresenting information, then that not only hurts you professionally, but it also hurts your profession. Let's now look at the various areas where there is a potential for misrepresentation. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list, but it will give you a sense for the most likely areas where misrepresentation might happen. The first one has to do with impact on investment practice. We must be careful that we do not misrepresent any aspect of our firm or practice. For example, let's say that our firm over the last several years has been managing a large cap equity fund, and last year a new small cap fund has been introduced. If our firm presents information to clients as if the small cap fund has been in existence for a while, or if the firm is presenting the fact that our company or our investment management firm has years of experience, making potential investors believe that we have years of experience managing small cap stocks or small cap funds, then that would be a misrepresentation. We as individuals should also not misrepresent our own qualifications. So, for example, if we imply the fact that we have cleared all 3 levels of the CFA exam, but in fact we've not, then that would be misrepresenting our own expertise. Members and candidates also need to be careful when incorporating third-party information. The point here is straightforward. When issuing a research report, you might be using third-party information. If this third-party information has some misrepresentation in it, and that then becomes part of your report, then you are responsible for what is being published. So be very careful about the information that you include. Make sure you do the due diligence to ensure that there is no misrepresentation in the third-party material that you are using. Performance reporting. This is connected with the earlier point, but focuses on performance reporting. As a firm, we should report information or report our performance that is not misleading in any way. The potential issues that might occur are the following. We might have had 3 years of really good performance, but then the 3 years before that might have been weak. So if we just choose to report the previous 3 years, then that would be a misrepresentation. Another example of misrepresentation would be that, let's say that our fund is ideally compared with benchmark number 1. So our performance should be compared with this benchmark, but instead we choose another benchmark which is not an appropriate benchmark, but which makes our performance look better. So that would be a problem. That would be another example of misrepresentation. The third example that I'll give related to performance reporting and misrepresentation in the context of performance reporting is also from the curriculum. This has to do with performance reporting on illiquid assets. Very often with illiquid assets, different models can be used to value, and obviously it's the change in value that drives the performance numbers. So if we are picking a model every year that's different in order to give us the best value, then that would also be an example of misrepresentation. Social media. With the spread of social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, a lot of information is being disseminated using these channels, and often the means of delivery or the language used on social media tends to be less formal than the language used in the print media. That might tempt investment managers to make somewhat vague and potentially misleading statements. The guidance on this is that firms should use exactly the same presentation and to whatever extent possible the same language, so that the message is not different between social media and print media. Omissions. In a sense, I have touched on this already, but any material information that is omitted also is a form of misrepresentation. And I'll repeat the example that I gave earlier. If we have had 3 years of excellent performance and the 3 years before that were weak, by only presenting the last 3 years worth of performance and omitting the performance before that, we are misrepresenting information. Plagiarism, this is important. Anytime we use the work of someone else, that needs to be recognized. And if we are borrowing information from another research report, then the information that we are reusing needs to be in quotes, and the author needs to be clearly referenced, the original author. The curriculum gives several examples of how plagiarism might happen, and I will read from the curriculum here. One scenario is using excerpts from articles or reports prepared by others either verbatim or with only slight changes in wording without acknowledgement. Another scenario in the curriculum is citing specific quotations as attributable to leading analysts and investment experts without naming the specific references. Number 3, presenting statistical estimates or forecasts prepared by others and identifying the sources, but without including the qualifying statements or caveats that may have been used. Number 4 is using charts and graphs without stating their sources. And number 5, copying proprietary computerized spreadsheets or algorithms without seeking the cooperation or authorization of their creators. So those are examples of how plagiarism might happen. The key point is that to prevent plagiarism, the authors need to be clearly mentioned, and whatever they have said needs to be in quotations. The next item is work completed for employer. An important point made here is that if we have a given employer, a given company, and work is done by one research analyst, the work done by the research analyst while employed by this company, that work belongs to the company. So if this research analyst leaves, the company doesn't have to keep saying that the work was done by so-and-so research analyst. However, another research analyst cannot claim that the work done by the earlier research analyst was indeed done by him. So this is fairly logical. We'll now look at the recommended procedures for compliance. And all these bullet points are taken straight from the curriculum. The first one is factual presentations. This point is fairly straightforward. Any information presented about a firm or information that we present about ourselves needs to be completely factual, and that minimizes the chance of any misrepresentation. What firms can and should do is provide guidance for employees who make written or oral presentations. Firms should also have a written list of all the services provided by the firm and the description of the firm's qualifications. By having things clearly in writing, the chance of misrepresentations becomes much less. Next, we come to qualifications summary. The individuals working at an investment management firm should list their own qualifications and the firm should verify that those qualifications are indeed correct. Verify outside information. What this means is that a firm should have policies and procedures in place to verify third-party information that is being used in the firm's reports. We talk about this at a firm level, but you as an individual are also responsible for making sure this happens. When you use third-party information, you need to ensure that that information does not have any misrepresentation. Maintain web pages. This again ideally is done at a firm level, but you as an individual are also responsible for helping ensure that the information presented on your company's web pages is indeed accurate, up to date, and does not have any misrepresentation. You need to encourage your firm to have a plagiarism policy, and some aspects of that policy are shown right here. The firm should maintain copies. So if any reports are being used as a source for the material produced by you or your firm, then copies of those reports should be maintained. Any quotations that are used in your reports need to be attributed to an individual or to an entity, and the quotations that you make need to be in quotation marks. If you are writing a summary based on some other report, then the report that you are summarizing also needs to be mentioned. Standard 1D, misconduct. Members and candidates must not engage in any professional conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, or deceit, or commit any act that reflects adversely on their professional reputation, integrity, or competence. Any act that involves lying, cheating, stealing, or other dishonest conduct is a violation of this standard if the offense reflects adversely on a member's or candidate's professional activities. Although CFA Institute discourages any sort of unethical behavior by members and candidates, the code and standards are primarily aimed at conduct and actions related to a member's or candidate's professional life. And this has been taken from the curriculum. There are some examples that I want to highlight here, which I've seen on questions quite often. One classic example is abusing alcohol during business hours. While that is not illegal, this activity will clearly impact a member's ability to perform his job well, and obviously then this can be classified as misconduct. Another scenario is personal bankruptcy. If a member or candidate declares personal bankruptcy, that in of itself is not misconduct. However, if the circumstances of the bankruptcy involve fraudulent or deceitful business conduct, the bankruptcy may be a violation of this standard. So the key point is whether any lying, cheating, or stealing or dishonest conduct is involved, which impacts the candidate's professional life. Coming now to the recommended procedures for compliance. The first is a code of ethics. Firms should develop or adopt a code of ethics to which every employee must subscribe, and make clear that any personal behavior that reflects poorly on the individual involved, the institution as a whole, or the investment industry will not be tolerated. List of violations. The idea here is to remove subjectivity to whatever extent possible. The firm should identify the list of violations and disseminate these to all the employees. This should contain all the potential violations and the disciplinary actions should a violation take place. And finally, employee references. Firms should check references of potential employees to ensure that they are of good character and not ineligible to work in the investment industry because of any past infractions of the law. That is it in terms of Standard 1D. Now you need to work through the examples. We are done with all 4 standards under professionalism, and what I'll now do is just quickly summarize before wrapping up this particular segment. The main points under knowledge of the law are that you must understand and comply with all laws, rules, and regulations. If there is a conflict, then you need to go with the strictest law. Just as a simple example, we said that in a given country, there will be an applicable law that you need to follow. And then on a given item, the code and standards happens to be more strict than the applicable law. You need to then follow the code and standards. You should not knowingly participate in any violation of the standards. And if possible, you try to stop the violation. If you cannot stop the violation, then you have to disassociate from any violation of the code and standards. Next, independence and objectivity. You need to use reasonable care and judgment to maintain independence and objectivity, and you should not accept any gifts or any form of compensation that might compromise your independence and objectivity. Misrepresentation. You should not knowingly misrepresent anything related to your professional activities. And finally, misconduct. You should not engage in any conduct that reflects badly on your professional reputation or your integrity or competence.